Imagine this. It's a quiet Saturday afternoon. The sun's out. Kids are splashing in the pool you've spent years maintaining. And then, out of nowhere, your homeowners association drops a bombshell, a fine for using your own pool. Yes, you heard that right. The very pool that's part of your property. But wait, before you picture me as the rebellious homeowner, let me assure you, I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just trying to enjoy a simple pleasure in the so-called peaceful neighborhood. Enter Karen, the HOA's self-appointed enforcer with a knack for rules nobody knew existed. She claimed I was violating some obscure regulation that wasn't in the original agreement. What happened next? Well, it wasn't just about a fine. It was a full-on war. And spoiler alert, I didn't just sit back and take it. Stick around, because by the end of the story you'll see how I turned the tables and how one locked gate became the ultimate mic drop. So, how does a pool turn from backyard bliss to battleground? Let's dive in. I live in what most would call a perfect neighborhood. Quiet, orderly, and as it turns out ruled by the HOA's iron fist. The kind of place where the grass must be exactly 5 inches tall and any deviation in mailbox paint color can spark a letter. Karen was the unofficial HOA queen, known for her aggressive keep-everything-perfect attitude. But she took it up a notch with me. I had just moved in a couple of years ago and finally decided to use my pool, something I thought was my right. One morning, I found a notice slipped under my door, a $250 fine for unauthorized pool usage. I reread it. Unauthorized pool usage. Since when does the HOA regulate who can swim in their own backyard? I reached out to Karen, politely, of course, to ask for clarification. Her reply was a cold, terse email filled with HOA jargon and vague references to community safety standards. It felt like being lectured by someone who enjoyed wielding power a bit too much. Small warnings started appearing on my property. Signs about pool safety compliance that I never requested. Surprise inspections. Neighbor whispers. Suddenly, I was the problem. One afternoon, I caught Karen herself standing by the pool, clipboard in hand, giving me the kind of look that said, "I'm watching you." She didn't say a word, but that was just the beginning. The fines kept coming, $250. Then $500. Then $750. Each notice more absurd than the last, citing disturbance of community peace because, apparently, the sound of children laughing was a violation. Then the threats started. Anonymous notes slipped under my door, warning me to comply or face legal action. One night, I found the pool filter sabotaged, turned off and clogged with debris. It was petty. Ridiculous. But it stung. Neighbors who once nodded politely now crossed the street when they saw me. Karen's influence was palpable. I felt boxed in, watching my sanctuary slowly be taken over by rules and fear. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. Small victories kept me going, like when one neighbor discreetly handed me an HOA rulebook. Guess what? It didn't mention anything about pool usage fines. Or the time Karen accidentally sent me a draft email meant for the board, admitting she was targeting me personally. There was humor in the chaos too. Like the time I found a pool closed sign nailed to my fence, courtesy of Karen's committee, complete with clip art of a grumpy cartoon Karen. Each incident built the drama. But I was planning my move. The gloves were coming off. Injustice was on the horizon. After weeks of harassment, I realized I couldn't fight Karen with anger. I needed strategy. First, I gathered every HOA document I could find, cross-referenced the rules, and uncovered that none legally supported fines for pool usage. Then, I quietly rallied other neighbors who'd grown weary of Karen's overreach. Next, I installed a heavy-duty lock on the pool gate. Not to keep out my family, but to prevent unauthorized inspections and trespassing. Alongside it, I put up a sign. Private property pool access restricted. I documented every interaction, emails, fines, sabotage attempts, and sent them to the HOA board. Slowly, the cracks appeared in Karen's armor. Her credibility started to crumble as more neighbors voiced their frustration. The local news even caught wind of the story after I reached out, intrigued by the David versus Goliath vibe. For the first time, I felt calm. Confident, Karen's reign was no longer unchallenged. The HOA board finally called a meeting. A tense, packed gathering where Karen's tactics were laid bare. I presented my evidence calmly, supported by neighbors who spoke up about their own grievances. Karen tried to defend herself, but her arguments fell flat against the mountain of proof. The board voted unanimously to revoke her special enforcement privileges. In slow motion, figuratively, but it felt like a movie moment. The lock on my pool gate became a symbol of victory. Karen's threats ended. And peace returned to the neighborhood. One neighbor whispered as we left the meeting, "You locked more than the gate. You locked down the injustice." I smiled and said, "Sometimes you just have to lock it down to open the door to fairness." Looking back, this wasn't just about a pool or an overbearing Karen. It was a lesson in standing up for your rights, calmly, smartly, and creatively. If you ever find yourself cornered by unfair rules or relentless critics, remember, strategy beats anger. Evidence beats emotion. And community beats isolation. So what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have locked that gate? Comment justice served if you made it to the end. I want to hear your stories. And hey, next time someone tries to fine you for breathing, maybe consider a lock and a plan.